What if everything you thought you knew about the Gosselin family was a lie? Jon Gosselin's daughter is finally breaking her silence, and what she reveals will shock you. Behind the cameras, behind the smiles, there was a script, and none of them agreed to it. Why did she leave? What really happened off camera? And why is she risking everything now to speak out? This isn't gossip, it's her truth, and it's time the world hears it. Stick around, because once you hear what she has to say, you'll never look at this family the same again. It didn't begin with screaming headlines or viral interviews. Hannah didn't come forward for attention. Her story slipped into the public space not with a bang, but with quiet devastation. A daughter walking out of her mother's house and choosing to live with her estranged father might sound like a rebellious twist in a custody drama, but the real story wasn't what it seemed. Most saw it as teenage angst or manipulation. Few saw it for what it really was: a young girl escaping a world that was slowly breaking her spirit. For years, we thought we understood the Gosselins. We saw their chaos, we laughed at their quirks, and we believed what we were shown. But once you hear what Hannah has to say, the question flips. It's not why she left. It's how she managed to stay as long as she did. Hannah didn't turn her back on her family. She left the version of it that had turned into a machine, one she claims robbed her of normalcy, agency, and safety. It wasn't rebellion. It was survival. She walked away from a home where every moment had to be camera-ready, every emotion directed, and every interaction staged. The polished chaos we saw was, according to her, carefully controlled. Bathroom breaks weren't even her choice, unless the scene allowed for it. Day-to-day life was broken into segments, not for rest or play, but to match the shooting schedule. Even simple moments like lunch or homework were sometimes rehearsed, repeated until the right take was captured. And if the emotions weren't authentic enough, they were ordered again, louder, with more tears. It wasn't encouragement. It was command. Hannah remembers how the yelling started, not from the crew but from Kate herself, when one of the kids didn't perform on cue. A forgotten line, a missed smile, a hesitant reaction. The cameras would cut, and the atmosphere shifted. Gone was the loving mother. What remained was cold silence or harsh reprimands. She says this wasn't rare. It was routine. And even worse, she claims the production crew saw it all. They watched but never intervened. Instead, they made sure the final edits looked warm and harmless. Kate's frustration? Cropped out. The tension? Erased in post. On screen, it looked like discipline. Off screen, Hannah says, it was control born from fear. This illusion of family unity was, in her words, a brand. And brands don't tolerate flaws. If a child flinched, refused to smile, or showed a sliver of resistance, it became a problem. And problems were resolved before the next scene could roll. Hannah recalls one moment when a sibling's timing was just off. Not angry, not emotional, just off. The result? Shouting until they broke down in tears, followed by just enough comfort to keep filming. That cycle of punishment then repair wasn't parenting. It was preparation for the next take. The cameras captured none of this. Viewers saw happy chaos. Hannah remembers rehearsed laughter and broken trust. And behind it all, there was something even more chilling: a set of journals. Not private notes for self-reflection or milestones. According to Hannah, Kate kept detailed records of every action, every attitude, every perceived misstep. These weren't diaries, they were logs. Labels like rebellious were scribbled beside names, marking the children not as individuals, but as behavioral cases to be corrected. Hannah says she stumbled upon one such entry about herself before she even understood what the word meant, but she felt its weight. The journals weren't to help her grow. They were, as she claims, tools for punishment, justification for discipline, and evidence to control. These journals didn't stay private either. When the Gosselins' personal issues spilled into the courtroom, Kate allegedly used them to bolster her image as a firm but misunderstood parent. The notes, once private, were turned into legal weapons. In those documents, Hannah wasn't a child expressing independence. She was portrayed as a problem. Her growth, her curiosity, even her need for space became signs of defiance. And with every entry, Kate built a case not just against her daughter, but against the very idea that children should think for themselves. Hannah wasn't just resisting rules. She was resisting a structure built to suppress her personality. When Hannah eventually left, the media filled in the gaps. Stories painted her as difficult, unstable, perhaps even mentally troubled. But she says none of that was true. She didn't have therapy, no diagnosis, just a need to breathe again. And yet the headlines twisted her narrative to serve a more convenient truth, that Kate was still in control, that Hannah was the one who needed fixing. It wasn't just unfair, it was erasure. The public saw a rebellious teen. What they missed was a girl quietly clawing her way out of a system she says was breaking her down, one rehearsed moment at a time. Her truth wasn't loud, but now that it's here, it can't be ignored. She remembers how it felt to see her own story twisted into something unrecognizable. They didn't call it survival. They called it defiance. They didn't see a young girl breaking under the weight of constant pressure. They saw a rebellious child. And just like that, her desperate need for peace was reduced to tabloid drama. But behind those headlines was a teenager trying to breathe in a house that left no space for air. The world watched from afar, dissecting her choices with no knowledge of the truth. And when she finally walked away, it wasn't a scream for attention. It was a whisper for freedom. But the media didn't care about whispers. They wanted fireworks. So they gave her a label. Not a child seeking safety, but one escaping rules. There was no dramatic tantrum, no explosive exit, just a quiet departure from a life that had become unbearably loud. Yet the headlines crafted their own version. And as those false stories swirled, she found herself increasingly isolated. It wasn't just the public that turned away, it was the people she once shared meals and memories with. Every attempt she made to reconnect with her siblings was met with a haunting silence. A silence that spoke louder than any tabloid could. And that silence wasn't coldness, it was fear. Fear of what they were told might happen if they dared to speak. That fear, she believes, was taught. It was enforced through whispered warnings, legal barriers, and emotional conditioning. One of the most devastating moments came when a long-awaited reply finally arrived. It was just a sentence. "I can't talk about this. Please stop." That single line crushed her. Not because it was harsh, but because it confirmed what she'd suspected. Her siblings hadn't forgotten her. They were simply trapped in a system that demanded obedience. Some were still under verbal agreements or formal NDAs, blocked from sharing even the softest truth. That's why every attempt to reach them felt like shouting into a tunnel. The deeper she called, the less came back. Not because they didn't love her, but because they couldn't risk the cost of being honest. She recalls how even household staff and close family friends were warned never to speak publicly. Babysitters, assistants, guests, everyone knew the rules. Don't share, don't post, don't slip. And if they did, legal threats followed close behind. This hush-hush culture wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated, a machine designed to preserve a single narrative, that everything was fine, but everything wasn't fine. And moments on national television made that painfully clear. Like the time Kate appeared on a morning show with her then 13-year-old twins, Mi and Kara. It was supposed to be a cheerful catch-up, but what unfolded was uncomfortable to watch. When the girls hesitated to speak, Kate's impatience slipped out. "Use your words," she pushed. And just like that, a private tension was broadcast live. Mi's soft response, that her mother had already said everything, echoed louder than any headline. Even the host admitted afterward the moment felt wrong. For Hannah, that moment wasn't just cringeworthy. It was triggering. She'd lived it. The pressure to present the perfect picture wasn't just for the cameras, it was a way of life. Behind the smiles was a constant reminder. Don't contradict the image. Don't say what really happened. Don't disrupt the story. She doesn't think her siblings are choosing silence because they agree with the past. She thinks they're scared. Scared of the consequences, scared of the fallout, and scared of being painted as ungrateful or rebellious if they dare to challenge what's been told. The fear wasn't just emotional, it was systematic. Kate reportedly kept detailed logs of every child's behavior, not just for personal reference, but for potential court use. That level of tracking made it impossible to breathe freely. It created an invisible pressure that followed them even after they left the house. Even now, some of them still flinch at the thought of speaking up. She understands why they stay quiet. But understanding doesn't soften the hurt. One of the hardest truths she's faced is realizing that just because they shared a childhood doesn't mean they share a future. And when your family lives under public scrutiny with a parent who knows how to control the story, speaking out can feel like walking into a storm. She doesn't hold anger toward them, just worry. A hope that one day the fear will lift, that they'll remember the sleepless nights, the whispered hopes, and the moments of silent connection they once shared. Because silence, she says, isn't just distance. It's a sign of how deep the control still runs. Amidst all the silence and rejection, one voice stood firm, her father's. For the first time, she opens up about the quiet, late-night conversations with Jon Gosselin. He didn't come with speeches or defenses, just regret. He didn't paint himself as a victim. He told her he wished he'd fought harder, that he should have gotten them out sooner, that he stayed too long in the spotlight, believing he could handle the chaos. But the chaos consumed them. He said he was scared. Scared of Kate, scared of the court, scared of the media, scared of losing what little he had left of his kids. He admits he failed them in moments that mattered most. She doesn't call him a hero, but she remembers what he never did. He never lied to her. He didn't make excuses. He owned his part, and that honesty became its own kind of protection. Not from the past, but from repeating it. When she once asked why he never went back to court to fight for all of them, he gave her a tired truth. He didn't think he'd win. That the emotional and financial toll would have crushed what little strength he had left. She didn't like the answer, but she respected it. Their connection today isn't about shared victories. It's built on shared truth. He may not have fixed everything, but he showed up. And that, she says, is more than most ever did. What broke her wasn't the spectacle. It was being left alone in the noise. But in her father's quiet, in his regrets, in his refusal to rewrite history, she found a piece of clarity. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beginning of something real. They said it was just a show, just cameras and a few lights. But behind those blinking red dots was something far colder, far more calculated. Hannah Gosselin doesn't speak with rage. She speaks with clarity, a clarity that only comes after years of pretending. While viewers clung to scenes of pancake breakfasts and birthday balloons, they never saw the aftermath, the silences, the stifled tears, the rehearsed joy. It was a polished illusion, repackaged into a feel-good family narrative. But inside those walls, something was unraveling. It felt like a dollhouse where the dolls were real people, she said. You were watched, but never truly seen. Cared for on camera, but forgotten between takes. The home they presented to the world had become a carefully constructed set, and those within it were actors in their own lives, following a script they never agreed to. The haunting truth is that punishments didn't happen off-set. They unfolded within earshot of boom mics and right in view of lighting rigs. And when the cameras kept rolling, no one asked if they were okay. Not the crew, not the producers. The aftermath was just part of the production plan. If there were signs of breakdown, they were swept under B-roll of backyard giggles or Christmas lights. But what stings the most, Hannah explains, isn't what was done. It's how it was denied. That false image, that curated version of a happy home, replaced real conflict with narrative control. The producers weren't simply bystanders, they were storytellers who knew exactly what to cut, what to keep, and how to twist discomfort into palatability. The illusion was powerful, and it cost Hannah more than just her privacy. It cost her peace. She tried to resist, tried to walk off, but every time she was met with, "Just 5 more minutes," or "We won't use this," yet they always did. Because in that world, the story mattered more than the person. Her no wasn't respected. It was reframed as defiance. And slowly she realized the space she called home wasn't a sanctuary. It was a cage. Even the walls betrayed them, thin enough to hear crying, but too thick for comfort to slip through. Every corner of that house was designed for coverage, not comfort. Even silence became part of the shot list. The hardest moment came not with confrontation, but with choice. When Hannah finally walked away, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a war. It was survival. No custody battle, no tabloid screaming headlines, just a daughter choosing a different kind of quiet. A quiet that didn't echo back with expectations or cameras. For years, the world believed Jon Gosselin yanked her away from Kate, but that was never the story. Jon didn't scheme. He simply stayed available. And when Hannah needed a safe place to land, he was there. Still, quiet, present. Not a hero, not a savior. Just an option that didn't demand she fake a smile. Her departure wasn't about escape, it was about breath. But the cost was staggering. She left behind 6 siblings. Shared beds, shared jokes, shared holidays. And in their place came absence. By 2021, both she and her brother Colin were living full-time with Jon. It became official in court, but no judgment could resolve what was left behind. Jon says the other kids haven't spoken to him since. His door remains open, but silence answers more than words. Hannah carries that too. The guilt, the distance, the wondering. But she doesn't blame. She doesn't label herself a hero. She's simply trying to survive the aftershock of pretending for too long. What people never saw were the nights of insomnia, the relentless anxiety, the fear of speaking too loudly. Years of being edited out taught her to internalize pain. And the more she tried to protect the image, the more that image erased her. They branded her difficult, emotional, rebellious. But they never once asked what made her that way. And now, with no PR team, no network behind her, she's speaking up. Not for drama, not for revenge, but for release. She's done playing the role that was assigned to her. The version of Hannah you saw wasn't her. It was who they needed her to be. And now she's reclaiming her voice. This isn't about destroying reputations. It's about truth. Messy, uncomfortable, but necessary truth. For too long, silence allowed myths to take root. She stayed quiet to keep the peace, only to realize that silence was never peace. It was compliance. And in that quiet, she was reshaped into something she didn't recognize. Today, she chooses herself, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means backlash. Because finally, the story isn't being written for her. It's being told by her. And beneath all the drama, there's also the reality of what this lifestyle costs and reveals. Kate Gosselin's wealth was once the envy of reality television. Lavish vacations, designer wardrobes, and those iconic TLC-funded properties. She reportedly owned luxury vehicles like the Audi Q7 and BMW X5, favored upscale brands like Cartier for timepieces, and lived in a Pennsylvania estate valued at over $1.2 million. Rumors swirled around potential private jet charters, especially during filming peaks. Her income wasn't just from TV. Book deals, product endorsements, and speaking engagements padded her earnings. But Kate was also said to carry robust insurance policies for her assets, health, and even career liabilities, all structured to protect her from fallout. And yet, the biggest lesson isn't what she acquired, it's what was lost. Money built a brand, but control over the narrative cost her trust, relationships, and eventually, silence from her children. So if there's one takeaway here, it's this. No amount of luxury can safeguard you from the collapse that comes when real life doesn't match the script. Investing in your brand may get you the fame, but if that brand overrides humanity, it eventually falls apart. Build wealth, yes, but not at the expense of truth. Financially, Kate taught the world how to maximize a platform. Emotionally, her daughter's voice just exposed what it cost. So there you have it, the untold side of the Gosselin family no one dared to share until now. From silence that speaks volumes to the raw honesty between father and daughter. This story reminds us how complicated fame and family really are. If you found this eye-opening, don't forget to hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you think. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more exclusive peeks behind Hollywood's biggest headlines. Up next, we're diving deep into another jaw-dropping celeb revelation you won't want to miss. Remember, no family is perfect, But some stories are unforgettable, and this one will stick with you long after the cameras stop rolling.